Would the Big Ten and the SEC go for this college sports tomorrow proposal, a super league, if you will? Well,
you are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
welcome everybody to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Realignment, coaching carousel, the portal, and beyond. We've always got you covered. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. We'll check in on NC State's spring game. Boy, the Wolfpack are every bit as impressive, at least on the field against themselves, as you think they might be. And we'll head to Champaign, Illinois as well. That's all coming up on today's show. Metaphorically, I'm not going to travel there, at least not today. So, let's travel to the world of this proposed Super League that has garnered much attention and discussion and debate, and would this league or that league accept it? I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility the Big Ten and the SEC could take this deal. Now, there are several hurdles that it would face. What would the television rights look like? What do you do with the current TV deals? When would it start? And everything like that. But here's the important thing to remember if you're someone who's going to hop in the YouTube comments and just say no to the question, would the Big Ten or SEC accept it? No. There are a lot of people that are very, very down like that. Try and be optimistic, people. I know it can be hard in this world of college football, but just bear with me here. This does not have, like the NFL, though there's an NFL exec reportedly involved in these discussions, an equal revenue sharing model. So why do the Big Ten and the SEC have more power than everybody else? Yes, part of it is that they have more national championship caliber teams. They have bigger brands, more viewership, everything like that. Okay, that's 100% why the Big Ten and the SEC primarily have got more power over the ACC, the Big 12, and of course the Pac-12 and the Group of Five. But if in this proposal, unequal revenue sharing is a component of the deal, well, what do you think that means? Because remember what I talked about on Friday's show, for those of my everydayers out there, for those of you who are new, welcome to the show. And allow me to summarize. The deal would create this Super League of 70 permanent Division 1 or Tier 1 Division 1 teams made up of the former Power 5 leagues, and there would be unequal revenue sharing based upon the amount of financial contribution that you are able to make as essentially television product, is I presume where the adjudications would lie financially, to this arrangement. So the SEC and the Big Ten would still have that financial gap. Now, would they have the power that they currently have? No. And I've said many times here on the show, it is really hard for human beings to give up power, money, and influence. The Big Ten and SEC wouldn't appear to be giving up the money part of it, which drives a lot of realignment. Not all of it, but a lot of it. If they're still able to get unequal revenue sharing and they get what they contribute or what they are worth to the value of that television contract, you would then need to appeal to the better angels of the Big Ten and the SEC. Yeah, it sounds a little far-fetched, a little bit of wishful thinking. Maybe it is. But maybe there is just a smidge of hope that as long as the outsized amount of money is still going to the former Big Ten SEC schools, or what we know right now, and will for the next 2 seasons as the Big Ten and the SEC, that you could get them on board with a proposal that stabilizes college football, that returns regionality as being a driving force for schedules and big matchups, and would consolidate everything into one foul swoop of a pot, or whatever you want to call it. I'm just, exchanging, or I'm crisscrossing my metaphors here, but you get the point that I'm making. It could simplify. It could stabilize everything. That's what you would have to make the appeal to. Do it for the betterment of the sport and say, look, we're not going to have to deal with this stuff anymore. We don't have to keep thinking about what our next realignment move is. Remember, Clemson and Florida State have not yet been able to leave the ACC. That's something they're trying to do, but they haven't been granted the legal authority to do that. The courts could come back and say, no, you signed the grant of rights, you're in the ACC, whether you like it or not. But if they leave, well, then the SEC and the Big Ten start to go on the offensive. You think at some point university presidents and conference commissioners get tired of all that? Do you think at some point they go, you know what, our league is fine, we don't need... Chris Gordy of Locked On SEC came on here last week on the show, maybe it was the week prior, I don't know, everything's blending together nowadays. We're already into the month of April, that much closer to real college football. Anyway, he talked about how Greg Sankey has stated in the past that, yeah, they're not opposed to further expansion, but they're not actively seeking it. They don't need more expansion. Well, then what would Clemson and Florida State? What if the Big Ten decides the same thing? No, we just added 4 schools from the West Coast. We're good. I see the logic of having 4 schools on the East Coast and 4 schools on the West Coast, but maybe the Big Ten doesn't see it that way. Well, would Florida State and Clemson then form a new ACC, or would they act as independents, go the Notre Dame route? That doesn't seem particularly likely. So I think that it is certainly a more remote possibility that the Big Ten and the SEC would agree to this, but with the financial component in place, I don't think you can ignore it. I don't think you can ignore the possibility of being able to go to these leagues and say, hey, we think this is for the betterment of the sport. And you'd have to get them on board with that and say, yeah, the Big Ten and the SEC brands, as you know it wouldn't feel that way. Maybe that's what the divisions would be named, and you'd keep that name alive. Or maybe they would start to just kind of fade as everything morphed into one, mega college football relegation league, which, relegation would be great. Just for so many reasons, relegation could be really, really good for college football. I don't know that the sport will actually move in that particular direction. I have my doubts, but I would love to see it one day. And when you've got the money, a lot of people who enjoy hopping in the YouTube comments, it's all about the money. Well, if the money is going to be the same as it otherwise would have been, had we kept the 4 conferences and everyone's got their own deals and it's all piecemealed and discombobulated and not creating the best possible product for fans who are actually driving the sport and creating the money that helps all these people, maybe. Just maybe they could say yes. Is it a tough sell? Yep, it can be. Because you can't pitch them on being able to keep the same sort of power and influence necessarily if you go to a consolidated league. But maybe, for the betterment of the sport, they'd say yes. Maybe I'm overly optimistic. But hey, forgive me for being a greater fool. So, are there fools believing in North Carolina State? NC State. I'm just messing with you, Wolfpack fans. Don't worry. Gosh, the Wolfpack showed some impressive stuff in their spring game. You know what's impressive? LinkedIn Jobs. Yeah, that's right. LinkedIn Jobs is. Because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring because you get a qualified candidate. 86% of small businesses do within 24 hours. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Boy, it was a big day. Are we in the twilight zone with NC State? We're going to answer that question here with Kenton Gibbs, resident knower of ball here on the show, or KOB for short. Locked On ACC, Locked On Wolfpack, joining me here once again on the show. NC State, one of the 2 power programs that had their spring game on Saturday. We'll talk about Auburn tomorrow on the show, but Kenton, number one thing that stood out to you during that NC State pregame, or spring game rather, was what?
The wide receiver room and the pass catchers in general, this is a complete 180 from last year. It was Kevin Concepcion or bust last year. It was, if you can't get it to 10, yeah, that's about it. Maybe we'll sprinkle in a little bit of Trent Penix here and there like his parsley and we're an IG chef, but that was about it. That was all you were going to get. And this year, you have Noah Rodgers, dog. Wesley Grimes, dog. All he catches is touchdowns, a 30-some-odd yarder and a 90-some yarder. What a freak. And then you look at the tight ends as well, absolutely showing up and showing out. I am pleasantly surprised. We knew that the wide receiver room was going to be upgraded because Joker Phillips, he didn't just get in his bag. He got into Louis Duffel. He got in that Louis Duffel and said, Prime said he was coming with his baggage in this Louis. My man, Joker Phillips, said, don't worry about it. Y'all think y'all got Louis. Y'all got swap meet Louis. You got that Louis that you're going to get on the corner of 5th Ave and Lenox. It's not the same as our Louis. This is the real, authentic deal. And I'm telling you, that group with Grayson McCall, C.J. Bailey, or Lex Thomas, they looked special.
Yeah, I thought that their, pass catchers, KC is just... That's a dude. That's a number one wide receiver in college football. You got to have that in an offense, and it's the best friend of even a veteran quarterback like Grayson McCall, who I really felt looked as advertised for the Wolfpack here, and head coach Dave Doran, just so solid, accurate, arm strength, some tight window throws. I thought the best throw he made, I don't remember if it was to Concepcion or not, but it was, an over the middle kind of glance dig route on a switch release in zone coverage, and he sees the window, throws a dart, catch made as guys are converging down on the wide receiver. I just looked at that and thought, yeah, that's Grayson McCall. Yeah, he's accurate. He's solid. He's not, special. I don't know if he's a big NFL guy or, has those sorts of traits, but he's someone who you can win a lot of football games with, because he's going to deliver the ball on time, on target. He'll make good decisions. I thought there was another play as well where, he's facing pressure, rolling out, everything's covered, just threw it at the feet of his running back, right? Yeah. You're not going to have those kind of freshman mistakes, and we'll get to C.J. Bailey in a moment. But that was my assessment of Grayson McCall. What did you see?
I agree. You talk about he's not an NFL guy because NFL requires one of the extras. But in college, you just need the bare necessities. And what are those, right? It's be on time and it's be on target. If you can do those two things in the college football game, you are indeed a quarterback that teams will win because of. If you can just do that, be on time and on target, you'll win plenty of ball games. And like you alluded to on that deep post pattern against, I believe it was covered 2 or 4. I can't remember which one, but I know it was an open middle of the field. Any way you cut or slice it, when you see that type of thing happen, you know that may not be a guy with a big-time NFL arm that's going to zip it around 60 yards on the knee. He's not going to make the out route to the other side of the field, and that ball is going to seem like it's getting faster as it travels. He may not have that type of arm, but you don't need that to be successful in college. You need to find your receivers, make the right read, put it on the numbers. That is all. That is it. How many guys have we seen go on and win it all with that? Now, does NC State have the talent surrounding him that some of those guys that have won it all have done? In the wide receiving core, it looks like a yes. In the running back room, it looks like a yes. The offensive line, the depth is a little bit of a question, but if they can stay relatively healthy, they'll be good there. But again, Grayson McCall is not going to be asked, hey, we need you to come into this offense and be Lamar Jackson. We need you to come into this offense and be Cam Newton at Auburn. We need you to come into this offense and be everything, or what's that movie? Everything, everywhere, all at once.
Everything, everywhere, all at once.
Yeah, he doesn't need to be everything, everywhere, all at once. He needs to be the best version of himself, hitting passes on time, and what else?
On target.
That's it.
And I think he's really capable of doing that. You look at the numbers he put up over the last several years at Coastal Carolina, has done a really, really nice job. And I also felt with him that he looked like he fit in to the offense really well. I don't think they, certainly in a spring game, you're keeping things pretty vanilla, but I think that he can execute everything that they need him to. in a capacity that allows them to succeed. Now, the rest of the team has to be able to succeed as well and be able to pick him up. He's not necessarily a guy that'll come in and go for 400, 500 yards all the time, lead the country in passing, and they're certainly not going to run an air raid offense with Dave Doran and company there in that offensive staff. But I thought the McCall was good. I thought the weapons looked impressive. I thought the running backs looked good as well. But there was a little bit of a glimpse for NC State fans out there at the future, Kenton, because, boy, I tell you that guy C.J. Bailey, I don't think that's a name that college football fans know right now. If you're not an NC State fan listening to or watching this show, you may not need to know that name this year, barring an injury to Grayson McCall. Mm-hmm. But next year, that's a name in the ACC, assuming it's still around, that fans are going to come to recognize.
I can't remember which rapper said it, but I believe the phrase is, if you don't know, now you know. Because if you watch that game, CJ flashed things that weren't even supposed to be in his bag. Yeah, we all know he's got the big arm, and he had those two receivers that are 4 or 5 stars, all the offers in the world. We knew he could throw the country mile. We knew he could do all those things. When he tucked that ball under his arm, and he said, jab step, and got upfield, 69 yards.
Was not touched. Was not only wasn't touched, there should have been an angle for him to at least be touched, and then there just wasn't.
And that's the special thing. Because quarterbacks are not supposed to have angle breaking speed. For those of you who don't know, angle breaking speed means, for the most part, defenses chase guys and we tackle predicated on an angle based on, all right, he's away from me. I can't go where he is. I'm going to end up trailing him. I need to go where he's going. Defensive backs are really, really fast. Just in case you didn't know, those short guys with the big dreads and all that, some of them got waves, some of them, even some of them look like Spencer in college and NFL, not so much. But when those guys get to running, they can generally predict, oh, he's going to be there. My speed dictates I need to go. He said, oh, you think you got the angle? You think you got the drop on me? Have fun with that. Sayonara, see ya later, pal. That young man is special. And in the words of Dewey from Malcolm in the Middle, the future is now, old man, because that boy can ball.
He can, and I think that, Grayson McCall, still very clearly the starter. That's going to be the game plan for this year, but the future heir apparent for NC State appears to be ready in waiting. Let's get you out of here on this, Kenton. We've talked about a lot of the good things that we've seen, the weapons, the quarterback play, but what's the biggest question you still have about the Wolfpack after their spring game on Saturday?
Yeah, so with every one of these plays that we're talking about is good, there's a downside of it, right? And here's the thing. The DBs, despite the fact they were getting torched by and large, they're not a downside because they were there at the moment of truth for every single ball darn near. It was just like, if he makes that play, you tip his cap, you go back to the huddle. Here's where I do have a problem. On that 69-yard run and plays of that ilk, where are the linebackers? I saw a little too much, a little too many false steps, a little too much, I don't know what's going on right now. I don't know what my zone drop should be. I don't know what marker I should be hitting. I don't know what my dog pattern is. I saw a little bit too much of that. And that's a little concerning. And that's why I said it feels like you and I all fair chat about this. And I said it feels like Bizarro World. NC State, the home of Bill Cowher, the home of Peyton Wilson, the home of Nate Irving and T-Todd, Terrell Manning, and you got all of this grand history of linebackers, which, of course, we just saw a trio, a trifecta of absolute dogs in Drake Thomas, Isaiah Moore, and Peyton Wilson. You're now looking at that group like, oh, this could be an Achilles heel. We have got to get our run fits proper off them because the 3-3-5 is heavily reliant. Tony Gibson loves the 3-3-5. He's not coming up off it. Him and the 3-3-5 go together real bad. The only problem is if the linebackers cannot execute in the 3-3-5, it is Katie Diggs at the doorstep for opposing offenses. That is just the reality. Despite the fact that Aiden White ain't gave up a touchdown since I had a firm hairline, despite the fact that Davin Van is one of the most underrated defensive linemen in the country, you will not see a 3-3-5 defense be good while the linebackers are out of position on a regular basis. So that needs to get cleaned up. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But if there's any position coach that I trust that I can say, give him 5 sentient Roombas and 1 good football player, and he'll make a good unit, it's Tony Gibson. So we'll see what they can do.
Kenton Gibbs, Locked On ACC, Locked On Wolfpack, and resident knower of ball, friend of the program. Kenton, thanks as always.
Hey, I'm always glad to be on. You know, Spencer is my brother from another mother, and if you ever see us in person, it's like Gary Bertier and and Campbell from Remember the Titans. We brothers. You don't see the resemblance, baby?
I see it. It's everywhere.
I see it all the way.
It's evident. It's evident. It is absolutely abundant. Is it abundantly clear what Illinois is going to do in the Big Ten this year? Maybe not. Illinois is not flashy. They don't have a rich history of winning, but they are in the Big Ten. Every now and then they could pop their head up like a gopher on Groundhog's Day and say, what's this? What are we doing here? And then sometimes it feels like they pop back down. That's what the 3 years have been so far with Bret Bielema at the helm. Did you know, right as I said that Bret Bielema is going into year 4 as Illinois' football coach? His 4th year in Illinois. That's a pretty solid amount of time. Now, this is not a hot seat discussion segment of college football because I don't think that that's actually warranted right now. Certainly the standard at Illinois has been raised above where it was at when Lovie Smith was in charge. So Bielema, I think, overall is fine. He's going into his 4th year. He's 18-19 at the helm, but they were, kind of underground, as in not in a bowl game, year 1, 5-7. They popped their head up, 8-5 year 2. Then they went back down a little bit, 5-7 year 3. No real major marquee wins a season ago. I am intrigued by their early season matchup at Kansas. We'll get to their schedule a little bit more later. But the question I ask about teams and programs like Illinois that are non-traditional powers is, are they just bound year in and year out to never rise up to the top? Are they just going to be mediocre or at the bottom? Is that all we're ever going to get from certain programs in college football? Maybe. I wasn't going to say Vanderbilt on today's show, but guess what? I brought him up. And so Vanderbilt is, of course, the quintessential example of, someone's got to finish in last or close to last every single year. So Illinois has not had a recruiting cycle that's going to blow you out of the water necessarily. That doesn't mean there can't be an expectation of winning for the Fighting Illini this year because they've brought in 7 transfers. Now, if I asked you, based on what you saw with Illinois a season ago, where are those transfers going to arrive from? Where do they need to place a heavy emphasis? Where would you think? For the second straight year, they're going to have a top 10, 15 pick in the NFL draft, this time coming along the defensive line. Well, they should probably revamp in the trenches a little bit. Well, they could use some players. You could probably look at a number of different places on Illinois' roster and say, they could be better here, they could be, better over there. Bret Bielema knows what he wants. And this offseason, he was able to, it would appear, accomplish his goals in that respect. Because they brought in 7 transfers. And clearly, Bret Bielema's goal of going out to find starting caliber players, which is what you're doing in the transfer portal. There are very few developmental transfers, right? With quarterbacks, it can happen. You think Julian Sayin going to Ohio State. You think Dante Moore going to Oregon. You think Austin Mack going to Alabama. Those are developmental transfers, but at other positions, you're bringing in guys to make an impact right away. 7 transfers, 6 of them are either offensive or defensive linemen. Is there another transfer portal like that, or transfer portal class like that in all of college football? If so, I have not yet been made aware of it. And guess what? The 7th transfer is a tight end. 6 linemen and a tight end. What do you think Bret Bielema wants to do? Let's make sure his team is as physically ready and capable as possible to compete in the Big Ten. Because you have a lot of Iowas or an Ohio State or a Michigan or an Oregon now that want to come in, win in the trenches, punch you in the mouth. I think Minnesota, Wisconsin, it's just part of the Big Ten identity. So I found that to be, amusing's not the right word, but it piqued my interest when I saw, wow, they didn't add any skill position guys on the perimeter on either side of the ball. Now, maybe that changes in the spring transfer portal window. April 15th, transfer portal will open again. Players can put their names in. They can go to different schools. We'll see who doesn't like where they stand in spring practice and all of college football. But let's get back to Illinois. They had a weird season last year, right? 8-5 the year prior. Things are feeling good. Then all of a sudden, they're fighting to make a bowl game, and they lose each of their last 2 games by 2 points apiece. And that kept the Illini from making a bowl game, those 2 games. What do you think the scores of those games were? If I said you lost back-to-back games by 2 points, what do you think the scores of those games were? Try 15-13 and 45-43 on for size. There were 2 games last year that Illinois participated in which both teams scored over 40 points. They went 1-1 in those games. There were 2 games in which the total number of points scored, maybe something you bet over with our friends at FanDuel, was under 30 points. They were 0-2 in those games. This is an Illinois team that struggled to score consistently, but also struggled to defend consistently, but was also kind of just good enough on both sides of the ball from time to time to almost make a bowl game in a pretty tough Big Ten. So I don't think that Illinois is going to bottom out this year. But do I see them making the leap forward that they would like to have in Bret Bielema's 4th year? That depends on Luke Altmyer, their quarterback, who some of you may know, some of you may not. He missed a game or 2 last year with an injury. When he played, let's just say there were some mixed results. There was great potential. There was also some not as great material to put on film. He ended the year with 13 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Now, I am not an analytics guru. I am also not ignorant to the fact that statistically, a 1.3 touchdown to interception ratio is not very good. That has to improve. But over the second half of the year, he showed why he was the starting quarterback, why he likely will be the starting quarterback again in 2024, because the potential is there. Remember, he was once upon a time playing at Ole Miss. Do you think Ole Miss has got good offensive staffs, historically speaking? Yeah, I think they do. When you look at what Altmyer did last year, there was a little Jekyll and Hyde to his game. Because in the first 3 games of the year, in which the only win was, let's just say, not one for the history books necessarily, but a couple of losses, including one to Kansas, another one to Penn State. Luke Altmyer threw 7 interceptions in those 3 games, and his team went 1-2. And then down the stretch, you started to see the potential. You started to see a glimmer, a possibly starting capable quarterback who's not at the bottom of Big Ten quarterback rankings, not at the top, but somewhere in the middle. Can he be more of a guy that is somewhere in the middle? That's an interesting question to ask. Because over the last 4 games that he started, his team went 2-2. That's pretty solid considering it was against all Big Ten teams there. He had 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So if that is able to be rolled over the course of an entire season and he stays healthy, what's Illinois going to be this year? Well, their schedule, not a cakewalk, not a gauntlet, but you got 3 games on here that I have a hard time seeing Illinois winning right off the bat. You go at Penn State, at Oregon, and you go at Oregon the week after you host Michigan. Now, Michigan's a pullback team this year, but are they pulling back to where Illinois is at? No, I don't think so. So those are 3 games right off the top where Illinois is going to be at a significant roster disadvantage from a talent standpoint. Now, are they at a quarterback disadvantage in all of those games? I'd take Drew Allar over Luke Altmyer. I'd take Dylan Gabriel over Luke Altmyer. I don't know about Alex Orji at Michigan because no one knows anything. Anyone who tells you, well, he's going to be this, well, you can guess. That's great. But until we actually see him play on the field, we don't know. But those 3 games, I don't think Illinois is coming out with a victory there. Here's how their schedule starts. Eastern Illinois, they should win that game, played at Memorial Stadium in Champaign. Then they host Kansas. You want to talk about a fascinating non-conference game that'll fly under the radar? Kansas, seen by many, including our friends at FanDuel, as a team that can win the Big 12 this year. They're capable, perhaps, of doing so with Lance Leipold and Jalen Daniels once again at the helm. But if Illinois is going to take that step forward, that game's going to be a good indicator. I don't think they have to win that game to have a better record than they did last year or finish towards the middle of the Big Ten. But you have to at least show something to your fans and to yourselves that you can go out there and play with a team that's going to contend for a conference championship. Granted, in the Big 12, not as strong. The statement still stands. If Illinois were in the Big 12, yeah, they would love to be contending for a conference championship. They host Central Michigan after that, so that'll be at least 2 wins in their first 3 games. If it's 3 wins, boy, don't sleep on the Fighting Illini now. They go at Nebraska against Year 2 Matt Rule. Do you want to face Year 2 Matt Rule on the road? We'll find out. We'll see if Dylan Raiola is that sort of guy at quarterback, but that's not the easiest way to start Big Ten play. At Nebraska, then at Penn State, before you host Purdue, host Michigan, then go at Oregon? Yikes. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Their bye comes in between a couple of home games after the Oregon game. They host Minnesota, bye. They host Michigan State. Michigan State game's interesting, to say the least. And then they go at Rutgers, at Northwestern. I'm not crazy about the Illini here. I don't know if I feel strongly about their win total of 5.5. I don't think I feel strongly one way or the other because there are a lot of questions on this schedule. Like, how good can Aiden Childs be in his first year with Jonathan Smith at Michigan State? What is David Braun's follow-up act going to be at Northwestern? Is Greg Schiano once again a bowl team with Rutgers? Those are the final 3 games. How does PJ Fleck bounce back at Minnesota after going 5-7 but getting into a bowl game last year? I don't expect a big upset here from the Illini. Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, every other game, yeah, I'd give them a fighting chance. You could say, all right, I need to end the show right there, right here, right now. Illinois fans, please forgive me. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.